let's get you more detail. We are joined by Newzroom Afrika's Tshegohaco Moagi, who's been keeping a keen eye on developments throughout the course of the morning into this afternoon, leading up to that dramatic arrest. And Tshegohaco, it does appear clear now, at least, we have an indication of exactly what charges Advocate Teffo is facing.
Well, indeed, good afternoon to you once again. So what we understand is that he's facing charges of intimidation and trespassing. This, of course, being told to us off camera by his instructing attorney. And he says that these are cases that range between 2020 and 2021. He then, of course, failed to appear in court, and that's why he now is being arrested. So, I mean, it really was quite dramatic what we saw from, just after lunch. We heard from the instructing attorney that he and his team are feeling threatened, and that there are intimidation calls, they are being harassed, and there are even death threats against the defense team representing accused number 1 to 4. And when I was having a very brief conversation with the instructing attorney a short while ago, he mentioned to me that they did it on purpose to mention certain people's names that were allegedly in the house when Senzo Meyiwa was killed, and within that they said that they did it on purpose, and they now see indeed that the threats to arrest the advocate were not just threats, because now that has definitely happened. But interestingly enough as well, that was mentioned by Advocate Malesela Teffo while we were trying to get an understanding from him as to why he's being arrested. He mentioned that it's part of intimidation by the police. This is a man, by the way, who was in the police force for over 15 years. And so he says that, he's been intimidated by the police. And to specify it, he says, in his own words, Begicele does not want me on this case, quoting exactly what Malesela Teffo had said to us as the media here in court. So very dramatic what happened. They immediately said that this is what's happening. They've got this intimidation. The judge then adjourning until the 30th of May. And from there then we saw these police officers come in to arrest Malesela Teffo with a warrant of arrest from January of 2021. And as you heard, he himself saying that he does not understand why he is being arrested and why it took them so long to arrest him. Something as well that the instructing attorney, Titi Tawane, said during the arrest that, why did it take them so long to actually come and arrest him, and why do it in court? Why could they not have waited for him to walk out of the court? Very valid questions that were raised, but the police saying that they cannot speak to the media. Instead, Malesela Teffo needed to be arrested.
Essentially questioning the timing of his arrest. And Tshegohaco, you mentioned that there are persons of interest that were mentioned here. You just spoke of the police minister. Do we know what then happens to Advocate Teffo? Will he be spending the night behind bars?
Well, we do not know that at this stage, whether he will spend the night behind bars or not. We do understand that he's been taken down to the cells, the very same cells that the people that he's representing, his clients, are taken down to during the adjournments, whether it's tea or lunch adjournments. And so he was taken down to those cells. He was, however, trying to call his own lawyer during this arrest, and he had said to his instructing attorney that the lawyer must be called as soon as possible. So we do not know at this stage whether he will spend the night in jail or whether he will actually be released tonight already and he'll be able to go back home. But the issue around the intimidation is quite a hefty one, because they did mention the issues, as I mentioned to you, to the names and people of interest that they mentioned, one of them being Shadrach Sibia, the other being the then MEC for Community Safety, Nkosi Malobane, Sizakele Nkosi Malobane. And we then understand that they did this on purpose. They said that there was a meeting that took place on the night when Senzo was killed or was shot. And that particular night, the 26th of October, they then had this meeting allegedly together with a Brigadier Ndlovu. And with that, they then called in the Sergeant Musia, who's been testifying here and being cross-examined by Advocate Malesela Teffo. And so they say that with that meeting, the crime scene was then completely changed, it was tampered with, and that is why then they also believe that that's why these intimidations have happened. And interestingly enough, we heard in court just after lunch that even during the lunch break, they were getting these calls of intimidation. The defense team that is representing accused number 1 to 4, they were getting these intimidation calls. And so quite interesting that even a few minutes after the adjournment of the court, we then see these heavily armed police officers coming into the court to arrest Advocate Malesela Teffo without reading him his rights, without giving him details as to why he's being arrested, and really just handcuffing him. And even there's a part where he asks if they are being violent with him, and they say that they are not being violent at all, but there's also parts where you're able to see that they somewhat manhandle him. So it will be quite interesting to see what happens with this trial now. We've seen delays. It's been almost 8 years since Senzo Meyiwa was shot and killed, and we've seen the consistent delays that have taken place, and it'll be interesting now to see what happens come the 30th of May 2022, because that's the date that this trial has been postponed to.
Explosive revelations coming out from the Senzo Meyiwa trial today, as well as some curious events with the arrest of the defense attorney, Mr. Malesela Teffo. And of course, one wonders what the accused are thinking as he represents, as you rightfully said, 4 of the accused. However, perhaps just remind us of what we heard from Sergeant Mosia in terms of his testimony today.
Well, Sergeant Mosia really adamant that the crime scene was never tampered with. He says that that did not happen. And even about the meeting, he says he knows nothing about that meeting that allegedly took place after Senzo Meyiwa was killed. This, of course, the meeting where those prominent names were then brought forward to the court. They've also said, the defense team saying that the people that were in the house at the time when Senzo was killed, that those people did not even sleep in that house in Vosloorus, that they slept in Malberton at a house where Senzo and Kelly Khumalo shared. And the sergeant said that perhaps could have been when he had already left the crime scene, because he remembers seeing people at the house. He remembers taking them to the second bedroom away from the sitting area so that he could look at the scene and take photos of the scene. It was then put to him by Advocate Teffo that the crime scene was already tampered with, that people had already moved things around, that he was being managed, so to speak, by Brigadier Ndlovu, and he says that he was just there to do his job. He knows nothing about being managed. He was there to do his job, which was to forensic, so to take the photos and to take those various swabs. So those are just some of the details that came out today from the trial this afternoon in court.
And very lastly for us, so when proceedings resume on the 30th of May, there's been a request for a projector, digital copies of photographs from the scene, as well as a laptop. Why?
Indeed. So the request came through from Advocate Zandile Mshololo, who is representing accused number 5. And you can understand it, Dudu. I mean, she wants for people to be able to see, and specifically for her client to be able to see the pictures that are being referred to here in court. So she did make that request, and she says that it will also be easier for her, and it will make her cross-examination shorter if the details are actually up on a screen, and she's also requested that there's a USB that is given to them so that they can then move. She can actually take some of it herself, or the other counsel can also take the footage and the evidence that is being shown in court, so that they can actually find, get more details as they are able to look through it. So that is the request that was brought forward. It has been granted by the judge, and so the order then has been that the state must ensure that they have this request of a projector, of the electronic photos, of a laptop, and of a USB, that this is made available for the defense team when they cross-examine Sergeant Thabo Mosia on the 30th of May.
As this arrest was happening, a lot, there were a lot of moving parts, so we appreciate that perhaps you were focused on just capturing that moment for us, but we did not spot the judge. Had he already left for his chambers as the arrest of the defense advocate took place?
Indeed. So the adjournment happened, Dudu, and the judge then left for his chambers. And about 2 or 3 minutes later, we saw these heavily armed men coming in to arrest Advocate Malesela Teffo. We did, however, a few minutes later, when the arrest was done, when he had been moved down to the cells, I did catch a glimpse of the instructing attorney, Titi Tabane, coming out of the chambers, from the judge's chambers, or from having a conversation with the judge about what had taken place. But the judge was definitely not in court at the time when this happened.
Tshegohaco Moagi, thank you very much for that comprehensive update. More to come from Tshegohaco with regards to today's developments and leading up to the 30th of May.